Welcome to another edition of Red and Black, where your conservatism is not just the color that you used to. I'm Lenny McAllister. I had a joke about the cold and freezing, but Jeff Charles promised me that if I made one joke about the cold, he would throat punch me right through the screen. And I believe him. So I'm not even going to try it. I'm just going to bring everybody on the air and say hello. And I'm going to actually start with the hero down there because he's surviving the cold, the ice. He's here not because of me, not because of them. He's here for you. Jeff Charles, the Black Han Solo. But I do have a question for you. I guess Han Solo really did deal with a whole lot of really cold, frigid conditions.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it is cold as Hoth out here. And you don't have to worry about me throat punching you because I couldn't fly anywhere even if I wanted to. The airport is shut down. We're all shut down. Everybody's out of power. They're restoring it, then they're not restoring it. Then they're restoring it, having it go out again, and then trying to restore it again, but then not really doing it, but telling us that they are. You can tell I'm very happy about this.
Oh my goodness.
And again, the aforementioned throat punch. I'm not doing it because I can see how thrilled you are with the whole dynamic down there in Texas. So thank you for joining us. Your fans appreciate you, Mr. Solo. Now, speaking of people that like to go solo and just listen to herself and talk to herself and another jazz, the rock star Kara Davis, who usually gets top billing, but she kind of survived this snowstorm. But for somebody that lived in Gary, Indiana, who really cares? It's not as bad as what Jeff went through.
No, it was bad. We went to Chicago. My husband turned 50 this past week. Happy birthday, honey. I love you so much. Woo-hoo. And we went to his favorite city in the world, Chicago, which is right next door to the city he was born and raised in, Gary. And we spent 5 days there with our kids. Our kids are pretty much California kids at this point. Our son remembers life in Gary, but our daughter doesn't. So it's the first time she saw snow. We were there during a blizzard. And look, I'm not embarrassed to say it. I'll just say it. My blood is completely California eyes. I was absolutely freezing. So I had it almost as hard as Jeff. Like, I was in the hotel and the heat wouldn't go up past 72, you guys. Like, it was bad. It was so bad. But like Jeff, I'm a hero and I just stuck it out. And so I want to thank you for all your thoughts and prayers. And we had a great time in Chicago. Jeff, you know what I'm saying?
There's a hero.
She's a hero.
Look inside your heart.
She is a hero, not a hero. But I do have a question for you, Kara, which is you're talking about this whole, he grew up in Gary, Indiana, but the kids are really California kids and they can't relate. Is your husband's last name Jackson? I've heard this story before.
No, we are not Jacksons. No.
I just wanted to ask. I wanted to make sure I covered all my bases.
It's funny, but like Gary's a small town. Like everybody's got some Jackson connection. You know what I mean?
Look, I spent a lot of time on the south side of Chicago.
Yeah.
I knew the story sounded familiar. I worked at WVON. They were very familiar with the Jacksons back in the day. I just figured I needed to ask just in case there was some breaking news. You won't.
No, but if I find some secret Jackson connection and I get some of that Jackson money, I'll make sure you guys never know.
Yeah, I think you're holding out on us. You won't tell us about your gubernatorial run, but I have to read about it on Twitter. And now I hear about this. We're from Gary, Indiana, but they're California kids. I'm trying to figure out if this is before or after the break with Motown. I digress. We'll figure that out later.
All right, we'll figure it out off air.
The Russian spy oh my gosh, we're already driving him to drink. We're less than 5 minutes.
You digressed.
Chris, look, Dr. Metzler is literally sitting there saying to himself, please say it. Say the D word. Say the D word. You had the glass in your hand.
He was waiting.
You only have yourself to blame, Lenny.
Right, you digressed. I'm simply following your lead.
Hey, can you just do me a favor and read that script we write for you every week?
Which would be what?
We missed a week last week, y'all. Can you tell we're punch drunk? We missed each other. We couldn't record last week. So
I'm only punch drunk because I haven't slept good for the past few days. So.
Yeah, exactly. Jeff was like, heat. He's literally been rubbing his face before we started recording to remind himself that what heat actually is. You can't rub that stuff in. It's not like lotion when your face is ashy.
I know. I wish I could send you some power, Jeff. I'm so sorry.
Gorilla glue, but
I'll power.
Let's not get into. Let's talk about.
Lenny, rein this in. Rein this
I'm gonna do this. Watch how I pivot this.
Purge these cats.
Of gorillas that have been giants in the industry.
Wow.
There, see you go. We actually lost one this week with Rush Limbaugh, which nobody has a neutral opinion of Rush Limbaugh. So this should be good fodder for us to talk about. What I'm going to actually do, usually we go to the rock star first, but what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to go to the person that had the furthest experience back with Rush Limbaugh, which that's not you, Jeff. I mean, we love you, but Hoth and Frozen and Leia and everything else, that's not you. That's you. You had an opportunity to mix it up with Rush Limbaugh way back in the day, and you've been able to follow his career as a conservative that's been in the mix for quite some time. Chris, I want to get your thoughts first, then I'll take it to Kira, then I'll take it to Jeff.
Yeah, and so when I was a young conservative kid, that was a very long time ago, Rush and I vehemently disagreed on his show a number of times. But the thing about it is, people say, oh, Rush is racist, he's all of those kinds of things. Talk radio would never, ever be the same. I learned a lot from Rush. I never agreed with Rush on a number of issues. Here's the thing, without Rush Limbaugh, they never would have been Donald Trump. And so folks can hate on Rush as much as they want. And I gotta say this, to the tolerant left, may Rush rest in peace. Seriously, guys? Look, at the end of the day, love him, hate him, otherwise, Rush taught me a lot. And so we didn't always have to agree, which we did not. However, Rush taught me a lot. And for the modern conservative movement, Rush essentially birthed that movement. He don't know nothing about birthing no babies. But he did do that. And so I don't really care. I mean, people have said to me, oh, you supported a racist. Yeah, okay, I've heard that I don't know how many times. And so from my perspective, I respect Rush. I respect all that he has done. I don't have to agree with him. This is the issue from the conservative standpoint that people don't understand. We are not about diversity of thought and opinion, except when you don't agree with us. And that's the magic, I think, of Rush.
Madam Rockstar, your thoughts?
Rush, I concur with everything that Doc said. I mean, he was just a giant in the industry. None of us would be here if it weren't for the paths that he strode before us. And I can remember in my early days of my journey towards conservatism being kind of a default liberal and borrowing my father-in-law's car to drive around Chicagoland area. One week I for some reason didn't have a car, and it was a new car, and he had it on talk radio, and I didn't want to change his radio settings. And he was a big Limbaugh fan. He was the first Black man I ever met who called himself a conservative and a Republican. And so we would talk politics a lot. And I was listening to the radio, and this guy came on the radio, and he started talking about all these concepts of the idea that Americans want to earn, Americans want to work, and most Americans don't want life handed to them, that there's joy in innovation and earning. And this is a country full of people who love to solve problems and push a path forward. And we deny, he talked about the idea of denying so many people that opportunity, like those of us who want to work and who would never take handouts just seem fine with other people wanting that for their lives, and in a way that's denigrating. And there's dignity in earning and just really pursuing happiness, he really pushed that home, pursuing happiness, pursuing liberty and life. And then he said, oh, and I'm gonna take a break for an obscene prophet timeout. This is Rush Limbaugh. And I nearly drove the car off the road. I was like, what? I've been listening to Rush Limbaugh and I'm agreeing with this guy this whole time and thinking, gosh, these are refreshing ideas. This is what I believe, but why haven't I ever heard anyone say these things out loud before? And it seemed so simple. And so from that day forward, I started listening to him. It was right around the time of the Donovan McNabb controversy. And I remember him saying, I'm going to play this audio because ESPN is framing this as one thing, but they never played the audio, so I'm going to play the audio. And I remember thinking, yeah, okay, good, I got this guy now, because he called this brother the N-word. I know he did, because that's what ESPN told me, and I can't wait to tell my father-in-law that I heard Rush Limbaugh with my own ears. And he said this, and he played it, and it wasn't anything like I had believed, that I was thinking. It was my first introduction to media bias. It was my first introduction to the idea that not everything that your favorite pundits are telling you is true. And it was my first introduction to the idea that there's more information out there for you if you're curious enough to find it. So Rush really is the father of conservatism when it comes to somebody like me. And I've raised a couple of Rush babies now. He was always on in the car when they were growing up. And like Doc, I didn't always agree with the things he said, but I always appreciated him. And even when I wasn't listening to him every day, if something big happened, Rush was the first program I was tuning into. I wanted to know what he was saying. I wanted to know what he was thinking. There's no way to quantify what an impact he had on our industry. And when you listen, I'll just say this to end. When you listened to Rush, you didn't hear a guy who was like how the left framed him. You didn't hear a guy who was angry and bitter and awful. That's how the left always framed him. But that, when you listen with your own ears, that wasn't who he was. I remember that was one of the biggest surprises for me, listening to him on my own, was this guy was actually full of joy. He was actually full of life. He loved this country. He loved his job. He loved his listeners, and he was very generous with the wealth that he had earned because of those listeners. And he took his burden to do good with his success, I think, very seriously. So love him or hate him, he will be missed. I loved him. I'm grateful for what he's done for this industry and all the inroads that he opened up for us. Rest in peace, Rush. Thank you so much. You will be desperately missed, but not forgotten.
Jeff, I want to get to you, but you touched on something, Kira, that just kind of jogged my memory a little bit. Number one, people forget that he was on NFL Sunday Countdown, which tells you how he broke across all these different genres. This is the dude that started spinning records. He actually spun records here in Western Pennsylvania.
Yes, he sure did. He
went from spinning records to talk radio as a conservative when nobody really cared about talk radio from a conservative point of view, and got to the point of time of NFL Sunday Countdown. He was big enough as a talk personality where he was a headliner at CPAC, where, if you all remember, he spoke. He was supposed to speak for like a half an hour. I think he went on, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, for almost 2 hours.
Yes, he did.
At CPAC. And on top of that, and I was in California for this, and this is a little Lenny story, Jeff. I apologize, but I'm going to get to it. This is where people sometimes step in potholes, and I love the guy that did it, but he stepped in a deep one. In 2009, he gave a roaring speech at CPAC, over 2 hours, no script. The media went to Michael Steele and said, is Rush Limbaugh the head of the Republican Party and the conservative movement? And Michael Steele, who was newly appointed the chairman of the RNC, said, Rush Limbaugh is an entertainer. I am the head of the RNC.
I remember that. Yeah.
My little story behind that was, I was at the State of the Black Union in Los Angeles, California, with Michael Steele in 2009. CNN asked both of us the same question an hour apart. Michael Steele gave that answer and almost had to resign. My answer was, well, I didn't hear Rush Limbaugh. Well, how can you get the Black community if Rush Limbaugh is the voice of your community? Well, A, he can be a conservative voice, but I am here at the State of the Black Union talking to Black people about conservative values. That said, Rush went across so many different delineations and impacted so many different things. You know, Kira, and I'll get this over to you, Jeff. Kira said that we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Rush Limbaugh. I'll tell you another entity that would not exist, Jeff, if it wasn't for Rush Limbaugh. You ready for it?
Mm-hmm.
MSNBC, Rachel Maddow. I mean, remember, Rush Limbaugh was on sports, and Keith Olbermann was a political guy with his own show on MSNBC. That doesn't happen if Rush Limbaugh isn't successful at what he did for many, many years prior to that.
Yeah, that's facts. I mean, and here's the thing. I mean, when it comes to Rush Limbaugh, I mean, I will correct you a little bit. I am more neutral on Rush Limbaugh. I didn't hate him. I didn't love him. Here's why. Because I didn't really listen to him all that much. And again, it was nothing against him, but I listened to his show sometimes. But I was more of a Prager guy back in the day. Now, I don't know what's happened to Prager now lately, but that's a different story. But I used to listen to Prager. But you know what? There is no Prager without Rush Limbaugh. And here's the thing. He's getting a lot of hate after he passed. He's always gotten a lot of hate. And they're claiming to hate him because he said racist things or whatever. But here's the thing. We can't take those people seriously because they don't really care about racism. I've said this many times before. The far left does not care about racism. If they're pretending to be mad at Rush Limbaugh when the president of the United States intimated that minorities couldn't figure out how to use a computer and log onto the internet and use a program, then I'm sorry, you don't care about racism. Now, if you can condemn both, then I can at least take you seriously, even if I don't agree with you. But here's the thing. Here's why they hate Rush Limbaugh. They hate Rush Limbaugh because he broke through the stranglehold that they had and still have on the mainstream media.
100%.
CNN couldn't stop him. CBS couldn't stop him. The rest couldn't stop him. He was able to reach an audience and get around their gatekeeping. And guess what? Guess what he taught us how to do? When it got into later, when it got into the 2000s, late 2000s, we started using alternative media to do the exact same thing. This platform right here is doing what Rush Limbaugh did back in the day. Again, CNN can't stop us. MSNBC can't stop us. They can't do anything about it because we have a voice. They're trying, but they continue to fail, and we will always find a way to get around them. And Rush Limbaugh was the original who did that.
People don't remember that there really was no talk radio before Rush.
Right.
There were AM stations that would sometimes have shows, but there was no talk radio. Part of the problem, which, you know, this is fate or kismet or God, however you want to say it, is that we had this fairness doctrine. When Reagan came in and got rid of that, it opened the airwaves for guys like Rush. So he was right time, right place. But before him, there was no talk radio. I mean, I've been reading stories
there was talk radio, but it was very localized. So
it was the stations had to share their airwaves with everything else, right? Like music, like you talk to anybody and they'll be like, oh, in 1982, my station was mostly whatever, country music. And then between the hours of 8 and 10 on a Friday night, we'd have the talkers, right? But the idea, like in LA, KFI, which is now the biggest talk radio station in the nation, Rush Limbaugh made that station. Before that, it was just kind of a PBS type-ish station. And then they put Rush on, and suddenly it became overwhelming. And then people realized, wow, yeah, people like this talk radio thing. So the fact is that if you're on the left or you're on the right, you're not doing talk radio if there's no Rush Limbaugh. He is why we have talk radio, right? And why talk radio is still so popular. Why should it be so popular? It has no reason to be this popular. We have podcasting, we have YouTubing, but people still flock to talk radio. So I think give the man his flowers. He was a groundbreaker. No matter what you think of him, he's a groundbreaker, and I'll always appreciate that. He
definitely was. The one thing that, and I'll say this, and I'm going to pivot to another thing that I think Rush Limbaugh helped create or definitely elevate. One of the things that I enjoyed from his style that I can say that I took from him was the fact that I could go on the air when I was a radio show host about 7 lifetimes ago. I could go on there and literally have no guests. People don't realize that a lot of times Rush Limbaugh would just go there and say, I'm going to tell a story for 4 hours, and I'm going to go.
Yeah,
and
he
maybe
never
I'll
had
get an
guests.
email.
No.
Yeah, maybe I'll get an email. Maybe I'll get a phone call. But for the most part, I'm going to go. And back in the day, when you had these localized radio show hosts, by the way, Rush Limbaugh is really the person that took syndication of radio shows to the level that it's at. Now, with that said, the localized show was basically, okay, I'm going to say this provocative thing. Let's go to Kira on line 1. Boom. And Kira would be a radio star for 30 seconds. I'd respond to it. Let's go to Chris on line 2. And that was radio. Rush said, no, I'm going to craft the narrative. I'm going to truly use the theater of the mind. Sometimes I'll be self-deprecating. Sometimes I will be so over the top that if you're really, really mad, you need to stop taking yourself so seriously, because obviously this is a joke. And when you do that, that's where the imagination really came into what the conservative movement could be. That's when the conservative movement started selling images. Now, there are some that would say they were the wrong images, but obviously in 1994, when you started having welfare reform, it was the right type of image. When you start talking about the Tea Party movement and bringing about a different type of conservative and bringing down government spending, that was the right type of image. So right or wrong, he had a big impact on what the conservative movement thought it could do moving forward. That
I
does
think all
actually,
right. I think almost no wrong. I'm gonna say, I know, Lenny, you're playing the fence here, but me, I don't think so. I mean, sure, like any of us, when you talk for a living, and you talk for 60 hours a week, eventually something's gonna come out that might seem, but
you never do that, Kara. You never do that.
I have the power of editing because I don't do live radio like Rush did, right? I have the power of editing, and he didn't have that. So his oratory skills were remarkable.
Yeah.
But I do think that he was great for the conservative movement, and he's not a racist. He never was racist. He's not a bigot. He was never any of those things. All those things are untrue. And I don't want to even make space for people to assume that is as how we're framing him. We're just trying, at least I think we're just trying to lend some humanity to him, but I mean, frankly, I've listened to Rush. I was a dirty liberal when I first started listening to Rush, and I was as hardcore Black Power as a girl like me could be.
You still are. You still
are.
No,
sure.
no,
ISIS.
you are. I mean, you didn't put that aside.
I'm all about Black Power, as you guys know.
Yeah.
But what I just say that to say that even me in that time in my life, I never listened to him and ever once thought this guy is a racist. I never once thought. I think he absolutely deserved to be the face of the conservative movement. And I'm sorry that he was white, oh, well, that's how it worked. But he earned that. He was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant. So I never saw anything wrong with looking at a guy like that. I guess the image is like, oh, this fat guy with a cigar, but
he's on the radio. He had a face for radio. That makes all the sense in the world.
It's like TV. Remember he had the TV show? Remember he did the TV show?
I remember
work
that.
out for him. But the other reason it didn't
work
work
out
for him.
Also had a radio show on TV at that time. This is really aging myself. Does anybody remember the Fabulous Sports Babe? It was literally Rush. Yeah, there's a reason why for that, because she also had a face for radio. But it was the same time they both were doing that. There was like a great stick on the radio. You put them on TV and you're like, not so much. It
doesn't always translate, does it?
No, it doesn't.
No.
And I want to say this before, because you touched on race. Sure. I want to say this real quick. There are people that cast him like that. I don't think anybody on this show is trying to put that out there. But in order to talk about his legacy, we all know that millions of people loved him and millions of people try to disparage him at the same exact time. That's kind of what ends up happening when you get to that level. They're going to sit there and they're going to micromanage or micro pick through one or two words, and they're going to blow it up to this very, very big deal, which is ironic because there was a spike in Black conservatism over the course of Rush's career because people like you, Kira, listened to his show and sat there and said, okay, this makes sense to me. I do want to work. I don't want to pay taxes. I do want to own my own business. I do like capitalism. I used to say in Chicago myself, there are no socialists standing out on street corners at 3 o'clock in the morning in the dead of winter. They're just capitalists focused on the wrong things. So if that's the case, then a message from Rush Limbaugh can make sense, right, Chris? And if that's the case, where are we as Black conservatives moving forward? And we're in Black History Month. I wrote an article on Valentine's Day saying, it's the strangest time for a Black conservative. It's a holiday of love, and no community really seems to love what you're really standing for. And here's this dude, Rush Limbaugh, to kind of pivot away from him, that made it more acceptable to accept these values and to project them as part of your everyday life.
Yeah, well, but here's the thing. I mean, the story of Rush has been so liberalized and hate. And so, I had a number of people to say to me today, they're like, how could you support this racist, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, did you know him? Did you ever interact with him? No, but my grandmother, whose aunt said that, no,
You're right.
Baby,
I never even heard his voice. I didn't even know his voice.
Right. Baby, I ain't got nothing to do with all that. I can tell you from my experience and kind of from what Rush put forth, this has been the experience. And I think it's important for us to embrace that. I don't care whether you liked him or not. That's not the issue. The issue is, as I think we've all said here, were it not for Rush, we would not be on this platform, period, end of discussion. But there's all these folks who are they're like, oh, well, you're a race sympathizer. Okay, first of all, I don't know you. Secondly, get the hell off my page.
Chris has turned into the dude with the nicest lawn on the block this week. Holy cow!
Yeah,
I like that. I don't know you.
Everybody else goes through snowstorms, and this Floridian is sitting there talking about his lawn. Get off my lawn, kid.
That's right. Exactly. It's like, get off my lawn jockey. I mean,
Oh, snap. Oh, here we go.
Here we go.
You need a drink. I digress. Over to Jeff. In regards to the whole dynamic of where Black conservatives are, I mean, we're doing a lot of evaluation in Black History Month. We're talking about Rush Limbaugh. It's in the aftermath of the Trump presidency. And I brought this up amongst the group about the guy that's running for governor in Michigan that, one of the very first things he wants to do is abolish Black History Month, as if that's the scourge of our existence. But it seems to be that the Rush Limbaugh opening of doors not only just led to intelligent conservatism, it's led to a lot of that too. And we seem to disproportionately have that within Black conservatism. So I wrote about it on Valentine's Day as far as just kind of where the Black conservative movement is. And I kind of want to bounce between the three of you. Where do you see Black conservatism, especially, the aftermath of Rush Limbaugh and his career with his passing, the aftermath of the Trump presidency, heck, 10 years after the height of the Tea Party coming into existence? Where is Black conservatism during this pandemic, and what does it need to be to help Black people through this pandemic?
The way I see it, I mean, and there is so much to unpack there, especially with the article that you wrote, Lenny, on this very subject. We could actually talk for a whole show just about that. But the way where I see Black conservatism, I mean, we see on the right in general, we do see somewhat of a civil war between the establishment and the non-establishment. I see that same thing happening within the world of Black conservatism, and it even started before the election. I think that we could very possibly be on the verge of a renaissance in Black conservatism, and I've actually been saying that for a little while now. The thing is that when the thing is that when it comes to Black conservatism, it's always been one way. You've only heard one type of Black conservative. Now we have other voices. We have other people out there talking about different things. In your article, you talked about how Black conservatives have to walk a line, because we have to walk a line between being accepted on the right, but also, dealing with rejection from other Black people. But here's my thing. A lot of the non-establishment Black conservatives who I know about, myself, and probably you guys included, we may get called some of the same names as the more establishment figures, but I don't get called Uncle Tom very often. I'll tell you that, right? I don't get called Coon very often. It's rare. And honestly, a lot of people who do get called that, in a lot of cases, they bring it on themselves. I hate to say that. I hate to blame the victim, but At the same time, if you're saying certain things, you're going to invite certain things back at you. So I think that we're on the cusp of something new here where other Black conservatives can come up and say, no, this is what Black conservatism really is. This is what Jackie Robinson was all about as far as his conservatism goes. This is how Malcolm X approached his conservatism. And so I think that now we're in an area where we can start to educate more, and people can see that Black conservatism isn't just what they've been seeing over the past decade or so. There are actual Black conservatives who actually like the Black community. They love being Black. They love Black people, and they want to help build the Black community up. So I think that, like I said, I think we could be on the verge of a renaissance as long as we continue to make our voices heard.
And there are Black conservatives that are married to people from Gary, Indiana, or married to Jacksons as well, like Kira.
No, I'm not. Hang on. I'm not married to a Jackson. Just need to make this clear for legal
purposes. Like every time I come on this show, Lenny has some type of rumor about me that I have to refute and be like, no, I'm not running for governor. No, I'm not married to a Jackson.
I'm not married to a Jackson.
I'm not Canadian. I really am an American. We go through these things often. But Kira, one thing that I did want to make sure I refuted was the fact that you said you're not about Black power, that you were in the throes of your Black power as you started listening to Rush. You're still very much about Black power, but you do that as an empowered Black conservative. So you kind of fit the model of what Jeff's talking about. We're at a crossroads because 2020 showed a whole lot of inequality. Black people were mad at everybody. I've mentioned that previously on this show. And now we're seeing this pivot point for conservatism overall, let alone Black conservatism. How are you viewing all this in this Black History Month?
I'm not sure how I feel about Black conservatism anymore, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm a conservative and I'm a Black woman. I'm not sure if I am on board with this idea that there's some Black conservative movement and that I want to be a part of it. I want to be a part of empowering the Black community, and I don't want to have to be labeled a quote Black conservative when I go out and talk to people or when I talk about issues like racism or taxes or school choice. The reason I am a conservative, the reason I became a conservative is because I was working in the Black community, serving the Black community. And I was realizing that all the policies that I always supported as a liberal, I was seeing them up close and I realized they don't work. And that grieved me, so I'm a conservative because this is how I feel. This is like the way up for Black people, for Black Americans. But I feel like sometimes, not to knock anybody who's about Black conservatives or anything like that. Like I get it. These are just labels and these are just personal preferences. But sometimes for me, I feel like the purpose of what I want to do gets lost in this label, Black conservative. Sometimes I feel resentful because it prevents me from diversifying in my career, right? Everybody wants a Black conservative on the show, but nobody wants the Black chick just to go on there and talk about climate change or something, And so sometimes I'm resentful of that. I don't want to be this label, although I do understand that labels are shorthand for things, and so I get that. But at the same time, as far as this movement is concerned, I don't know where the movement's at. I don't know where it's been. And I don't really know where it's going. All I know is that for me, I love being Black. I love Black people. I'm raising Black people. And I believe wholeheartedly that Black people have a huge stake in this country. You cannot tell the history of America without Black people. And so wherever I can, I want to stand up what's best for us. And tangentially, the great thing about it is that what's good for Black America is good for the rest of America. So it's easy to do that as a patriot and a conservative, right? But I don't know. I guess I'm feeling frustrated a lot about like how the right perceives Black conservatives, how we're supposed to be or not supposed to be. And so I don't know if I'm like into playing the game anymore. I would like to see our colleagues on the right, our white colleagues on the right, be a little more open to different types of Black voices. I would like to see that. I would like to see some of them be willing to, step aside for some of these voices every now and again. I know I'm sure we have fans watching this right now who are going, we're conservatives and we don't play identity politics.
We went through this before.
Yes,
We
you
went
do.
through this. We went through this.
Yeah.
And
Let's
we're
broke this
also,
down. Yeah, you do.
we're
Yeah.
entertain, and also we're entertainers. Every pundit in this business is an entertainer.
Right.
And so what's hot in the entertainment industry right now? Diversity. So why wouldn't the right, like you just talked to Lenny about how great Limbaugh was for crossing genres, and we've been kind of pushed backwards by the current atmosphere of censorship. But what greater way to cross the entertainment divide than to look at ourselves as entertainers as well and understand that, we have brands and there's nothing wrong with like giving people what they want to see, and people are wanting to see more diverse voices. So I don't know, lately I've just been feeling, like I said, I love being Black and I love Black people. That's why I'm a conservative. I'm kind of tired of all of the judgment that this label Black conservative comes with. Not that I'm ashamed to be conservative, never hide it. I can explain to you why I'm a conservative in 3 or 4 sentences. So I'm not running from it. I'm not sure. I don't know that there's a movement. There's people like you and I. We do this show every week, but I don't know where the other people are. I really don't know what they're doing.
Well,
I don't know that we're
You're
that
out there.
unified.
Well, one, they're out there, and two, I mean, I got to push back a little bit, and I'm going to throw it out to everybody, so just jump in. Do people like us really have a choice? I don't feel like I have a choice. I am a Black conservative that's proud to be an American, proud to be Black. I know that every time I crack open, my keyboard to write an article, to send a tweet, to make a statement, whether it's in my day job or on Red and Black or anyplace else, I am all of those things. I don't get to walk away from being a Black conservative. I don't get to walk away from being affiliated with the Republican Party. I don't get to walk away from being Black either. So I get what you're saying, and I get the frustration because Lord knows it can be limiting. It's almost like you're like the pet at the zoo. Look, we have this exotic animal here. We love the Black community. We even love our token Black Republican. I've been on TV shows where that's what you end up being. But there's also an opportunity if we leverage it right. And if it's not for us leveraging that right, the Black community may not advance, but so far. Black conservatism in regards to diversity in politics may not advance, but so far. I don't know if we really have the option to walk away from it at this point in time. Maybe I'm wrong, you guys.
Well, but the thing is, do not ask me to come on your show to talk about how Black people feel about X, Y, and Z. I don't speak for the Black people, okay? I am not in charge of the Black people. Omarosa thought she was, but we could do a whole show on that.
Yeah.
But again, the issue for me is, yes, I am Black. Yes, I'm a conservative. Have me talk about economics. Have me talk about the fact that here are how these policies impact my particular community or my particular, but don't pigeonhole me. And I think to Kira's point earlier, look, do not have me working on your campaign as a Black conservative to do door knocking.
Yeah.
I ain't knocking nobody's door. Okay, that's not the issue. The issue for me is, as we look at people who are Black and conservative, the idea is, if we look at conservatism lifts people out of their current situation should they choose to take that lift. That's the issue.
Yeah, but Dr. M, can we, as we're purporting that, and I agree with that 100%, I'm on board, as we all know, all 4 of us are, but can we eschew being Black and conservative and thus that label Black conservative while we're doing that? Or is that part of the obligation of us being out there talking about those issues?
Well, I think it's part of the obligation of us doing that, but do not pigeonhole us into thinking that our expertise is We are Black and conservative.
And that's it.
And that's
Right.
it.
Because Black people have all kinds of different opinions. Like I'll go on a show and I'll be like, this is how I think, but if you go ask 10 other Black people, they probably don't think this way. Like I can't speak for everybody. I can give you perspective, and let's be fair. Like I don't want you to ignore me. Like I have a perspective, right? We can give you perspective. But like, and I certainly don't want to see one more, I'm not going to name any names, but I don't want to see one more popular conservative blog where it's 4 white guys talking about race. And then that's it. Like there's nobody to consult, there's no other Black people. Right. And I don't want to see that, but I also like ask me back. Like there's a few people I have that will call, like they like to talk to me, and that's it. But there are so many other people who just want the token, and it can get disheartening. And if you're not, I think the other thing that I feel disheartened about sometimes as a Black voice on the right is that if you're not a flamethrower, that doesn't seem to be attractive to people. Right. And I don't want to throw flames. Not doing that. The Black community has been on fire for 400 years.
I'll complain. But I won't be throwing them the way you want me to throw them.
I'm a mom. Who has to sweep up the ashes? I'm a mom. Who's gonna have to sweep up the ashes? Don't be making a mess, boy. Yes.
But here's the thing: they may not always like the directions in which I throw those flames, though. That's the only caveat I have about that. They want to throw flames,
too, right?
And here's the thing: I mean, we talk about being pigeonholed. I mean, it's created the perception. Well, here's the thing: you'll see a lot of conservatives, white conservatives, say Black political thought is not a monolith. You'll hear Black conservatives say that. But then by the way that the right has done things, it's created the perception that Black conservatives are a monolith.
Yes.
So the thing is that they have to understand that we don't all necessarily think the same, and they have to be okay with that. I mean, and just to speak to Kira's point, just to get a little a white pill in here, for lack of a better term, I do see things changing. I think a lot of white conservatives are becoming more open to hearing people like us, and the thing is they haven't heard us before, so the problem is that does create some cognitive dissonance. You're going to get a lot of pushback, but there are a lot of white conservatives who even message me and say, I never thought about this until I heard you say it. You don't get that from the Black conservative establishment that we've seen coming up. So I think it's fortunate that we have their voices. I want their voices out there too, but I want ours as well. And I'm glad that even when I get called on shows, they're not always just asking me about Black stuff. They're just asking me my opinion as conservative. But I also don't mind if they want to talk about the Black community, because it gives me a chance in a lot of cases to educate them on certain things.
Right. Yeah, let's make that clear. Let me make that clear too, because I might have some fans that are watching this, and I want to make sure that is clear too. You're absolutely right. But the flip side of that is that people will feel shut down or rejected, right, Jeff? Yeah. So you're right. Like, I would much rather you come and let's have this conversation. It's not that I don't think my criticism is really aimed at white people, to be honest. I think my criticism is aimed at the industry. That's what I'm sick of. Yeah. Not the people that listen to us. Yeah.
I would agree with that. But and here's the other thing. Now, I will point this at some of the people within the industry that we work with. One of the things I love about Red and Black, and I'm not trying to tip our own hat, but I guess I am, it's the fact that you can tune in here and somebody's going to disagree with me. It's usually me, right? It's not usually you're disagreeing with Jeff or someone's disagreeing with Dr. M.
Because you're always wrong. I mean,
it's always somebody disagreeing with me. But the point of it is, through that disagreement, you get two really robust opinions that are still rooted in fact, just different perspectives. And it's as if we, even within the Black conservative movement, which you would think we really don't have a whole lot of room to be, divided amongst us. There's not that many of us even still. But the inability to debate is not, it's taken over America. We can't disagree without hating each other in America overall. But in a movement, and there I will say, Kira, I still think it's a movement. I think it's a movement that's on wobbly legs, but I still think that it has the opportunity to move forward. The Black conservative movement does not have the mature ability to disagree and learn from each other and keep moving it forward. I commend all three of you for doing that for me, But man, it would be nice to see that go to being a national phenomenon, not just a red and black phenomenon.
Agreed. I mean, and that's the thing. And I think that's the potency of red and black. I mean, we get together, we talk about issues with no holds barred. I mean, we bring up issues and perspectives that even though people may have those perspectives, they have not spoken about them openly, or in some cases, as you said, Jeff, they've never really thought about it. I mean, that's, I think, the beauty of this show. And I think to the extent that there is a movement, we're part of moving that along. I mean, this is a no holds barred discussion. We're not always going to agree, but what we provide every week is a diversity of perspective. And I think that's the important thing here.
So let me pivot, because, and I'm going to get rid of you, Jeff, because nobody likes watching us fight. They like watching her and me fight. They're like, you two must be siblings. And I'm like, we are. We love each other. That's my sister. And she can't stand me. But she loves arguing with me. See, exactly. and my dad still thinks she's his favorite person on the show, but I'm not going to even get into that, nor am I going to say the D word. With that said, I am going to bring up something that will get us back to arguing, because we've talked about this before. This development, the fact that Aunt Jemima is no longer Aunt Jemima, she is the Pearl Milling Company. And no longer will you have Aunt Jemima in a perm. No longer will you go back to the days where black women were waiting on white families hand and foot. We're going to finally cast that aside. People like me still probably won't buy their products because of their history. People like Kira are like,
what's the point then, Lenny? What's the point? What is it? You spent all this time complaining about Aunt Jemima, and the name on the pancake box didn't make a bit of difference as to how the pancakes taste. Pancakes taste great. The syrup tastes great. I didn't care if Aunt Jemima was in her rag or had her perm. But they change. Now you spent all this time complaining about it. Now they change it, but that's still not good enough. What do you want them to do? You want them to go out of business?
No, I said I might not buy them. But yes, does it please me that I don't have to see images of black people as slaves on the shelves every time I go down the shelves?
You didn't even like the perm. You didn't even like her perm. And her perm was...
Yeah, Lenny, you didn't even like her when Abraham Lincoln set her free. So you just have this thing against Jemima. I don't know what the problem is.
I think you just don't like Jemima. I personally... So we've had
What does she do to you, Lenny? What does she do?
I collect like Jim Crow kitsch, or what we would call Jim Crow art. Mm-hmm. You can come to my house and you'll see like a lot of old school salt and pepper shakers with like caricatures of black people, or if I find like an antique a thing in an antique store from the 20s, depicting a minstrel show. Those things are fascinating to me. And my son, there's Aunt Jemima. Look how happy she looked, because she's making some money on her pancakes. I don't know why you hate Aunt Jemima. And anyways, my son, I had some salt and pepper shakers that I was so proud of that I had found. And my son was like, he's 18. He said, how can you stand to have those things in the house, to have them on display? And I said, to me, I don't think it does us good to erase this part. And I find the perceptions and depictions of Black Americans throughout history fascinating to me, especially because I'm a child of the theater. I have a degree in theater, and so Black theater has always been the history of Black theater has always been fascinating to me, and how we had to move through these stereotypes, and blackface theater is a whole thing on its own. And I think that there is something beautiful about recognizing the ugliness of how we've been thought of and where we were, and recognize how far we've come. Now, I recognize that Aunt Jemima is just a lady on a pancake box. She's not some big artistic representation, but
which a lot of people tried to make her out to be. By the way, when this whole debate came up months ago, there were people that tried to make her out like she's some symbol of entrepreneurism and everything. And I was like, come on, y'all know that the dude on the cream of wheat box is a slave. You know that Aunt Jemima was a slave. You know that there's other images.
are we helping ourselves by pretending that didn't exist, or by pretending that this wasn't a part of our national identity?
Here's the question I want to throw out to you all. I get that the four of us as educated people can go through that and see that as a sign of empowerment of where we came from to where we are. When your 9-year-old is contrasting images in the media and images in commercialism of empowerment for some and slaves and servitude for others, and that's perpetuated over decades, there's something that's unsaid that's there that is damaging, at least as far as I'm concerned. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I see that.
When are you allowed to use the imagery? In anything, in product placement, in entertainment, when are you allowed to use it?
So here, I want to add something to this, and this may not seem to make sense at first, but you guys know I've been
motto. This probably won't make sense, but
it won't make sense at first, but you're gonna get it. I hope so.
Okay.
I'm still sleepy, so hopefully my brain is still working.
That's what it is.
But as you guys know, I've been learning to play the banjo since December. Now, a lot of people don't know the history of the banjo. They think it's a white instrument. It's not. The banjo was originally invented in West Africa. It was brought here during the slave trade. Up until the early 1800s to mid 1800s, it was played almost exclusively by Black people who were slaves. Now then, after that, white people took the banjo and started using it in minstrel shows to mock Black people. And then, but Black people still played the instrument even up until the early 1900s, until jazz was developed and they gravitated more towards the guitar. But that instrument is still a beautiful instrument, and it's part of our heritage. And to me, one of the reasons I wanted to learn how to play it is because I don't think that we should lose that. Now, take on Jemima. Yes, she was a slave. Then she was freed. Then she used that to build her own brand. She overcame certain obstacles to get to where she was. I understand the imagery aspect of it, and I understand how certain people used that. But just because that was her origin does not mean that that is where she had to end up, and she didn't end up that way.
Right.
She ended up on that bottle, and I get we're talking about pancake syrup and we're talking about flapjacks and whatever, but at the same time, her story is not that of just a slave, and we shouldn't just relegate her story to when she was a slave.
What you're saying, Jeff, but Dr. M, we're also talking about, and hate another expression, we're talking about the talented 10th interpreting this. We're not talking about the everyday American that in instances such as now, when there's economic upheaval, that feel like their country's being taken away from them. We always see spikes in racial stereotypes and racism during hard economic times. We see a reversion back to the worst tropes in our history during hard economic times. We've seen that during the 21st century. We're seeing it now. We saw it in the 20th century and the 19th century. We can be cute and interpret it in those ways, and I get that. But for the average American, they're not looking at a slave on a box that way. They're looking at it as that's a slave. When they see Black people in images, and 90% of the time, Black boys are going to jail, doing drugs, or carrying a ball, they're not saying, well, Black guys can do other things when they're in college. That's where they're locking us into. Those type of images also play towards that, I would think.
Well, okay, I hear you. I think that's a great explanation. But at the end of the day, Aunt Jemima ain't got no job now.
Okay? Thank you.
And see,
now she's unemployed.
Why is this
Aunt Jemima?
Right. So is she supposed to get unemployment now? I mean, like, seriously?
So she don't even know how to get online. She don't even know how to get on the internet.
Right, because she ain't.
And now she's going to become a welfare queen.
Right.
We went with Joe Biden tropes and Ronald Reagan tropes.
You can't learn to code now.
No. Because see, at this point, what's going to happen is, ooh, child, she ain't got no job. She need to get on welfare. Ooh, Lord, how you do that?
I got to end the show now.
Wait, Lenny, I want to say, wait. I feel like my eyes are going to roll all the way back into my head listening to you talk about this, Lenny, because this is one of the things that
we got literally a couple of minutes left, so you got to.
I'm going to make a good point here. I'm going to make a brilliant point, maybe the most brilliant point anyone has ever made on a YouTube show ever. So hang in. when you say it's not what we think, but it's like what other people might think, I hear a liberal elitist when you say that. So we're dealing with being censored now on the right. Everything we say and do is being censored. It's a real struggle to stay online right now with the big tech gods deciding winners and losers. And one of the things that people say is, well, you and we're intelligent. We know what you mean when you say, hey, people are angry, or maybe the election had some fraud issues. But those other people, those dummies, the unwashed masses, they don't know. And so you can't, and that, to me, that's what you just said. You just said, well, we're the smart ones, but every other American is too dumb to know the difference between a lady on a pancake box and me. And know that I'm not a slave, even just because Aunt Jemima has a do-rag on the pancake box. And also, there is no way that anybody there's no way that any kid you're talking about associates what they see on that box with slavery. They associate her with pancakes.
I'm going to say two things, and then we're going to end the show because we're running out of time. We got to go real quick. Number one, let's not act like America doesn't know what a dog whistle is. We all know what a dog whistle is. Number two, when it comes to imagery and what you can access, you brought it up on the last show yourself. Let's go back to the studies between blonde Barbie, black Barbie. When black kids see certain things that are seen as being dumb, inferior, or ugly, they internalize that. Those studies have been going on for decades. They just did them this past decade. And the same thing they found in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, they've been finding today.
And Jemima still ain't got no job.
Inferior or ugly.
Okay.
And Jemima still ain't got no job.
We gotta go. I gotta go get some pancakes from Log Cabin.
Anyway, Lenny, you win. Aunt Jemima doesn't have a job anymore. We don't have to worry about her making pancakes no more. You win. Are you
Thanks, Lenny. You owe the Jemima family reparations.
That's right. There you go. That's a whole other conversation.
Kira, what are you doing this week? You got literally 15 seconds before they kick us off the internet.
All right. Find me. Just Listen to Yourself with Kira Davis. You can also head on over to davisnation.locals.com to join my growing community over there, where we have all kinds of stuff going on. And also listen to my Hallmark podcast, A Very Merry Podcast, where myself and my friend Amelia Hamilton talk about all things Hallmark. We are Hallmark super fans. We have a great time. That's A Very Merry Podcast and Just Listen to Yourself with Kira Davis, both available wherever you find your podcasts.
Kira is brilliant. You need to follow her and listen to her podcast.
Don't be trying to make it up to me now, Lenny. I'm mad. Don't be trying to make it up to me now.
And Jemima still ain't got no job.
Chris, you need to go past that line on the script. You got like 20 seconds. Go.
CPAC promoting, as always, red and black.
There you go. I digress. Jeff, go.
Yeah, you can catch me on my podcast, my YouTube channel at Breaking Conservatarian. I do live streams every Monday and Wednesday night. Obviously, this week I didn't, but after I get some sleep and my power comes back on, next week I'll start up again Monday and Wednesday at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Check me out,
folks. First of all, those of you in the way of the ice storm that have been dealing with things that Jeff has been dealing with, you're in our prayers. If there's anything we can do, let us know. We try our best. As Americans, we stick together. Second of all, find us on YouTube. We're building out bigger and better things. Continue to subscribe to the channel. Before you know it, the platform's going to change. It's going to be bigger and more exciting. Hang in there. Join us. Third of all, follow us wherever we're writing, whether it's Red State or elsewhere. We got a lot of content out there. And of course, every week, make sure you tune in to Red and Black, where we're apparently serving pancakes. Maybe they're Jemima pancakes. Maybe they're from the Pearl Milling Company.
I don't want pancakes anymore. I'm never eating another pancake again.
I'm done. I'm done with that.
This is why you can't work with Black conservatives, because they don't ever want to get along. Anywho, I'm leaving. They can stick around as much as they want to. TCNGB, take care and God bless. Peace.
Peace.